I throughout my life. I've participated in a variety of opportunities, but never ran for a public office. When I started listening to some of the challenges we have in District 91, and specifically some of the representation challenges that we have, it became very apparent that we needed a change in our representation here from this district, because our current representation doesn't represent the people that we have. We have a conservative body of people here, and the reality is my opponent's not well, he's not been challenged ever. He started this in 2012, and no one's come out and stepped forward. So I really think that from an education perspective, a lot of the voters, they see the Republican, they make the assumption that my opponent is a conservative at heart, and they vote for him based on that. But the reality is, without an opposition, without someone to step out there and say, "Listen, this voting record is not indicative of what a conservative stands for. This is not what we as a group of people really stand for," and so we need to make some adjustments in our representation. He's not had that yet. So my real challenge in this election cycle is to get the word out. Talk to people, tell them what's going on at our state level, what's going on with regard to how our representative continues to introduce new tax bills, trying to drive up our existing taxes, which is already astronomical, which is going to further stagnate our economic growth. And we're blessed here in the Northwest corridor with lots of economic development and growth, but we still have challenges with regard to that. And what would our economic growth really look like in this part of the world if we were to lower those taxes in a range that makes sense and stop trying to fund all of these outlying projects through additional taxes, and instead start working to fix our spending problem in this state and really work toward spending resolutions that make sense. So that's kind of how I got to this point, was thinking about all of the challenges that we have, the representation that doesn't represent the majority of the conservative base that's in this district, and how do we get from where we are to that point.
Wow, that's a really, really good answer. We're talking with Scott Richardson. He is a Republican candidate for District 91 in a Republican primary. And you were talking about how you don't think the current representation representing challenges is how you phrased it. And so I just I wonder, do you think that the primary is pretty much the general election now? I mean, Republicans, if you want to do anything in this state, would get political power of any kind for the most part, especially up in your neck of the woods. You got to have an R next to your name. And so, would you agree with that? This is kind of the general election. I mean, if you win this primary, there's a good chance that you're going to be serving in Little Rock.
And that's generally the consensus with most people. Well, obviously, we don't want to take anything for granted. There obviously is an opportunity for a Democrat to step forward and throw his hat in the ring, his or her hat, and try to make a run at it. The reality is, I'm not sure that representation would be that much different from a Democrat at this point. We do.
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to The Paul Harrell Program. Brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Happy Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Paul Harrell program. Thank you so much for being with us. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine, and we want you to help us do that. One of the ways you can do that, very simple, is to contribute to the program by just letting me know what you think. You can give us a phone call or a text message at 870-275-9799, or you can sound off on Facebook Live or YouTube. We would certainly very much appreciate that. We've got a lot of news to get to. I want to get to the we've got audio of Jan Morgan and her listening tour. The listening tour of Jan Morgan continues across the state. The last time we checked in, we were playing you audio from Alma, where she was there at the Warren Rec Room, I believe is what it's called, and she gave a speech to a packed house. This time we have audio from earlier today. The lunch, is it a weekly lunch that the Faulkner County Tea Party does? The Faulkner County Tea Party invited Jan Morgan to speak at their lunch. It's a great event. I've been invited to speak a couple of times. It's always there. Faulkner County, and I've said this before, and I mean no disrespect to the other grassroots movements and different groups out there, but I will say that out of all of them, Faulkner County has a lot of participation and is, well, very, very organized and can point to ways that they have affected change, in their local community. And I think that's really important. And so can others as well. The times I've been down there, it's just their meetings are very structured and it's very, very interesting. So Jan Morgan was at the Faulkner County Tea Party, and she got in. She told a little bit of what she's told at previous speeches, but she also got into a little bit of policy. I certainly want to talk about that, let you hear what she had to say a little later in the program. But before we get there, I want to start with a journalist by the name of Steve Bronner. Steve Bronner, he is published in newspapers across the state and everything, and he also has his own website. It's called Independent Arkansas. Okay, the subheadline here is "Where We Talk, Not Yell, and Think Independently." So independentarkansas.com is where you can find a lot of his stuff, and I know you've seen him and read him in other publications as well. This one in particular was interesting to me. Why is this man so comfortable? It's obviously a photo of Governor Asa Hutchinson. And so he's asking the question, why is Asa so comfortable? The first paragraph of his article reads, this is part of the calendar. This is the part of the calendar when elected officials often are more worried about campaigning than governing. That's not the case with Asa Hutchinson, not yet anyway. He goes on to recount, and this is where this photo is taken, an October 17th sit-down with reporters, and this is when they call this media availability. Steve Bronner notes and recognizes that the Republican primary is half a year away, and you would think that he would have used this occasion to toss some red meat to the base. Now, that's a very interesting point. You would think Asa Hutchinson would, or a typical politician would, but not Governor Hutchinson. Not Governor Hutchinson. Red meat to the base. At this point, what would be considered red meat to the base, Asa Hutchinson is embarrassed to talk about. I mean, what would Asa say that would be red meat to the base? I mean, what could he possibly say that people would take seriously? Tax cuts, yeah. But so far, when he's asked about potential tax cuts, which we all know are probably going to be tax increases, but when he talks about tax cuts, what is he says, well, we're just pumping the brakes. We got to see what the tax farce has to say. We got to wait on them. Instead, he talked policy, Steve Bronner writes. Quote, he stated his opposition to using general revenues for highways. He also offered assurances that his Arkansas Works health program would not be harmed by President Trump's ending some subsidies for insurance companies. Steve Bronner goes on to note that that's boring government stuff, not campaign stuff. So why is Hutchinson so comfortable with the state of his campaign? Bronner notes that there's several reasons. Number one, no Democrat opponent. Now, the fact that there isn't a Democrat opponent, I'm glad he's brought this up. I'm glad he did this because, well, we've mentioned it before. Who's it going to be? Who is it going to be? And I have a little, it's speculation, but I mean, if you're a Democrat and you witnessed the rise of Donald Trump and you never thought it could happen, people like me who are constitutional conservatives, I didn't think Donald Trump had a chance of winning the nomination, much less the presidency, and I was totally wrong about that. If you're a Democrat, though, you've got to consider the possibility that if Jan Morgan throws her hat in the ring, that she'll win. And that possibility all of a sudden makes the concept of a token Democrat candidate that we have to put out there so we'll stay on the ballot and have ballot access, but we don't expect him to compete. Basically, I mean, do the Democrats find a Jim Keat like the Republicans did back when BB was so popular? Or do the Democrats hold and maybe put somebody in there that could actually attempt to compete against a Jan Morgan candidacy if she were to win? Oh, and by the way, I don't put it past. You talk about primaries and you talk about. I don't put anything. Listen, this just could get crazy. This could be the wildest local Arkansas election in history. It really could. You just wait and see. I'm telling you, folks, there's so much power concentrated in just a select few and a select few entities. The idea of losing that, you're going to see some very interesting things take place. But not having a Democrat opponent right now, apparently, I mean, if you talk to Michael John Gray, the minority leader in the House, and he also is the chair of the party, the Democrat Party of Arkansas, if you read between the lines of some of the stuff he said over the last couple of weeks, nobody really wants the job. Nobody wants to run for governor and announce so that they can lose. You know what I'm saying? Wouldn't it be refreshing, though, if the Democrat candidate running for governor would just be honest and say, I'm just doing this so we can keep ballot access, but Ace is going to win? I mean, wouldn't that be refreshing? Instead of having to go across the state and pretend like your message will actually compete, instead of going across the state and pretending like that your campaign has a chance of winning. All I'm saying is, now that Governor Hutchinson might have a primary opponent in Jan Morgan, and the Trump effect that we've just seen, the Trump effect that happened last primary season when Donald Trump was on the ballot and all these folks came out. I'm just telling you, the Democrats are probably thinking, this is another variable in who we pick to be the Democrat candidate. Steve Bronner, again, independentarkansas.com, he goes on and says that the second reason Hutchinson is comfortable is that even the strongest Democratic opponent would have little chance. Arkansas, particularly in national and state races, is now firmly a Republican state in name only. Now, that's me. All 6 members of the state's congressional delegation, all 7 constitutional officers, 3/4 of the state legislators are Republican. The third reason, Bronner writes, that Hutchinson is comfortable is that he's got $1.5 million for his re-election campaign. Most of it's still in the bank, and that is a war chest. There's no doubt about it. But Steve Bronner does mention that he has a Republican challenger. If there's anything that might make Hutchinson uncomfortable, it's that it appears he has drawn a challenger in his own party, Jan Morgan, a Hot Springs gun range owner. And she is forming an exploratory committee and asking for campaign donations. Morgan is Sarah Palin without the subtlety, is what Steve Bronner writes. Calls her an effective promoter who doesn't pull punches either. Now this is interesting because if you read the second to last paragraph, they say that towards the end of the piece that she's going to accuse Ace of being a rhino, and that he can't imagine her winning, but then again couldn't have imagined Trump winning. Primaries can make elected officials more uncomfortable than the general election. Turnout will be much lower in May and will be concentrated among the Republican base, which includes a lot of voters who agree with Morgan on guns. Hutchinson, listen to this last line. Hutchinson will try to ignore her because engaging her will take him places he doesn't want to go. Bronner predicts that he'll win, but eventually something she says or does or some crazy poll number will make him less comfortable. So this whole thing is how Asa has nothing to worry about here, but there's a chance. But here's the thing. Asa hasn't ignored Jan Morgan. And that's his first mistake. If you're any kind of politico, Asa is now reacting to Jan Morgan. Asa is now on the defense. And you might not know it in the mainstream media, but if you're in conservative circles, we have the email. And I don't know if maybe Steve doesn't know that. I don't know. But we have the email from the governor's assistant making $50,000 a year, bullying Mississippi County, trying to get Mississippi County to not invite Jan Morgan. Now, I mean, to me, you say what you want to, but that's not ignoring Jan Morgan. That's trying to get her uninvited from events where she wants to speak to Republican voters. That's not ignoring her. And I was talking to somebody the other night. They're like, why in the world would Asa have done this? The only thing that this does is actually promote Jan Morgan and let people know that there is a viable alternative if she does in fact run and get out of the exploratory committee stage. So when I read this particular article, I thought it was interesting, comfortable. Ace is really comfortable. But if you know what I know, if you've been following this program, we have demonstrated to you, go read the conduitforaction.org piece about that, the open letter to Republican committees. Asa Hutchinson is anything but comfortable. The Republican Party of Arkansas just lost their political director. He's now working for Jan Morgan, Alex Roundtree. We covered that yesterday. These are not things that make the establishment or Asa Hutchinson comfortable. I can assure you of that. We're going to take a break. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program, and it's brought to you by Conduit Media Group. The Liberty Machine rolls on, and we'll be back in just a moment. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
What you cooking? It smells familiar.
I'm cooking something amazing, new and different, and you're going to love it, babe.
Really? It seems like we've had this dish before.
Don't believe me? Come and taste it for yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm right. This tastes just like Obamacare.
No, actually, it's the new private option. I call this fantastic new dish Arkansas Works.
That's odd, because it looks and tastes just like Obamacare.
Why do you always have to be so critical? I'm in here cooking, trying to do something nice for the family.
Because I thought we talked about this before. I don't like Obamacare.
You just need to give it another chance.
So, you admit it's the same?
No, it's different. It's Arkansas Works.
Let me ask you something. Does it smell like Obamacare?
Yes.
Does it taste like Obamacare?
I suppose so.
Are you using the same ingredients to make it as you used to make Obamacare?
Yes.
Then how is your so-called new dish, Arkansas Works, not Obamacare?
Well, let me explain, honey. You will remember, recently, I had my name legally changed at your request, right?
Yes, I know. You had it changed from Duke to Rover. I dislike the name Duke, and I think Rover sounds so much more personally responsible.
Well, now that I'm called Rover instead of Duke, I believe I can take the same recipe and ingredients and create a dish with the same smell and taste from before.
Okay.
And because of my name change, you will love it.
I'm not buying it. And I just realized the name Duke and Rover are both common names for dogs.
PHP Parody.
The declaration will be a triumph. I tell you, a triumph. If I was ever sure of anything, I'm sure of that. A triumph. And if it isn't, we've still got 4 days left to think of something else.
So back on October the 17th, when Governor Asa Hutchinson had media availability, he did mention, hey, look, we don't want any general revenue going towards roads. There's a Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette by Greg Harton that comments and expands more about that and what the Highway Commission's going to do. No general revenue. Now, why in the world do we not have there's some interesting parts in that. We're going to get to that here in a minute, but why in the world can you not have general revenue? Because our budget has other priorities. Our governor, the political establishment, has other priorities. And they're going to tell you, well, it's education. It's for public safety. No. That's what they're going to say. That's not the real reason. That's not the real reason why we can't get spending under control and prioritize the money that we're giving to the government to take care of us or to do the things we agree on. Take care of us is I don't like that phrase. But it has to do with the fact that we have other obligations. We have agencies, government growth that's out of control. We have welfare programs that continue to grow, and that's what that money's going to be used for. And it's not going to be used for roads. So when you think about those potholes, and then you think about the governor saying general revenue will not be used to fill them or to make better roads, when you think about that, I want you to think that the money that could be used for the roads that benefits a vast majority of Arkansans is instead going to give free health care to able-to-work adults who choose not to work. That's Asa's priority, and it has been from the moment he was sworn in. I'll talk more about that article here in just a minute. The phone number, if you want to call us or text us, is 870-275-9799. I mentioned that we've got some audio of Jan Morgan. We are going to get to that a little later in the program, but I did notice that she has put out a Facebook post that I found very interesting. She says, I need your help. I am genetically conservative to the core. I believe in smaller constitutional government that puts money and freedom back into the hands of the people. In the next few weeks, she writes, I will be rolling out my policy positions on a number of issues, but rest assured, I believe government is not the solution. It is the problem. Now, do you think you could ever... I don't know if I've ever heard Asa say anything like that, because they don't believe that. They believe government is the solution to our problems. Every policy, she goes on, every decision I make as a leader will be carefully measured and must pass constitutional muster. It must not conflict with the Arkansas state constitution or the Republican Party platform. That alone, folks, puts me in a class of Republicans who are in an extraordinary league of candidates that are true conservatives. If you want establishment Republican leadership, you've got it in Asa, she writes. If you don't, then I am the candidate with enough base at this stage to seriously challenge him. And then she says, click on the link. If you're interested in helping me send the establishment a message, we are taking our party and our state back for the people. I need your financial support. Yes, out-of-state donations are welcome. Now, this is a big deal. Jan Morgan has a massive reach, but she's been on Fox Business for so long. She's got a massive reach here in the state, a massive following in the state, but she's got a big reach outside of the state. And so, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to donate to her campaign, and I predict that it's going to be certainly intimidating to Asa and the boys when they, when you start rolling out some of these reports. I really do. I mean, we'll see, but I just have this feeling that's going to end up being the case. Hey, Joe. Did you hear, this is interesting news, did you hear that Senator Eddie Joe Williams has resigned? Arkansas Senator Eddie Joe Williams has resigned today. He's taking an appointment with the Trump administration. And this has people very confused. Yeah, Senator Eddie Joe Williams, he is a big government Republican. And he's going to work for the Department of Energy or something. And I don't know what he's going to be doing. He's going to be like in charge of or contributing to the management of energy in like 15 states or something like that. Eddie Joe Williams used to be like a locomotive conductor. Joe asks, has Donald Trump done the research on who he's getting? I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. Appointments like this happen in every administration. I don't really even want to focus on that. Eddie Joe's Eddie Joe. I mean, you can look at his record. He's a big government Republican. That's who he is. That means there's going to be a special election, though. And R.D. Hopper is a true conservative who won by a hair lost by a hair. And I will tell you this. The idea of a Senator R.D. Hopper, I tried to call him earlier. And I was just like, well, are you going to run? I haven't heard back from him yet. Anyway, back in a minute. Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this. And I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
You have a tendency to vote Republican in this part of the world, and that's a good thing. We're a conservative base of people, so if you're going to make an adjustment to your representation, you've got to do it. You really have to do it at the primary level.
So, so far, what's the reception been like as far as this? Is this challenge welcome? I mean, have you talked to folks who are well aware that Dan Douglas couldn't sponsor enough tax increases? I mean, whether it was the gas tax, the internet tax, or the other internet tax, and, look how he voted with the tire tax and everything else. I mean, are people aware of what's actually going on in Little Rock right now?
Generally speaking, I've ran into both sides. There are a number of individuals that do follow close enough to understand what's going on, but by and large, the population doesn't really understand his voting record. They make the assumption that of course he's a Republican, so he should be voting in a conservative manner. And when you start talking about the challenges that exist in his voting record, you really do start opening some eyes. So far, the representation. Or I should say the feedback that I'm getting, people are starting to have an eye-opening moment that this is a challenge that we have, and we need to make this change.
I'm going to ask you about a specific question or specific issue. You know, he was the champion for the internet tax, and I've gone, an internet sales tax, and I call it a new sales tax. Whether he was supporting Jake Files, which was the unconstitutional version that would, allow Arkansas to claim sovereignty over a business in Indiana so that they owe a local tax that's going to support local infrastructure, or his personal one that he sponsored, which had to do with, getting reporting, getting websites to report the activity, and then the state would go collect, which good luck with that one politically. But his arguments for this were that there's this unfair advantage, that Main Street is bleeding, and somehow giving the government more money is going to save, is going to change the market and save small business. What's your reaction to his support of that and his arguments for it?
Well, the reality is it's from my perspective, and understand that I come from a technology background. I've been doing technology for 20-plus years, so I understand the range of challenges associated with trying to enforce regulation on the internet.
Egg. What egg?
America, the birth of a new nation.
If only we could be sure of what kind of a bird it's going to be.
Tom has a point. What sort of bird shall we choose as the symbol of our new America?
The eagle.
The dove.
The turkey.
The eagle.
The dove.
The eagle.
The eagle. The turkey.
The eagle is a majestic bird.
The eagle is a scavenger, a thief, and a coward. A symbol of over 10 centuries of European mischief.
The turkey.
The turkey is a truly noble bird. Native American, source of sustenance of our original settlers. An incredibly brave fellow who will not flinch at attacking a regiment of Englishmen, single-handedly. Therefore, the national bird of America is going to be...
The eagle.
The eagle.
7 minutes ago, I got an email from the press office, the governor's press office, headline, Governor Hutchinson to encourage flu shots will receive his own Friday morning. So just in case you guys were worried about Asa not taking his flu shot, he's getting one tomorrow morning, and he will join the Surgeon General, Dr. Greg Bledsoe. And this is an effort, a public event to encourage Arkansans to get their flu shots. Dr. Bledsoe and Governor Hutchinson will receive their vaccinations at the same time. Is this really news? I don't get a flu shot. I just want you guys to know. I haven't had one since, I don't know, it's probably been 10, 15 years since I had one. I can tell they don't make me feel good. I'm not one of these people that necessarily get sick. Of course, it's been so long. I just, something about it. If you kind of look into it, there's a certain amount of strand. Like, oh, we think it's going to be this strand, or this strand this year, but we have no idea. Anyway, is this the role of government? Maybe some of you would argue that it is. This is just the governor using his bully pulpit. It's time to get your flu shots, boys and girls. Just so you know, that's the news. Governor Hutchinson will encourage flu shots, and he will receive his own tomorrow morning. Many of you out there were very worried before this announcement. This is why you campaign. This is why you and as your governor, if elected, I promise to let you know when I'm properly vaccinated. If you're governor, if I get elected, I promise to let you know when you can get your flu shots. I don't know, whatever. All right, moving on now. We have a columnist editorial out of Northwest Arkansas about the roads. His name is Greg Harton. He is the editor for the Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. And there's a few things that stand out in this. Okay, we're kind of going through columnists today. We had Steve Bronner's column we were talking about earlier. Now Greg Harton. Headline: The governor says no. Highway advocates continue search for funding. All right. The governor says no. He starts off by saying, in Arkansas, all roads lead to a shortage of money for Arkansas's highway system. People can't help but make, like, transportation puns when we're talking about roads and stuff. They just can't help it. In Arkansas, all roads lead to a shortage of money for Arkansas's highway system. Now, should that be? Is that really the state? I mean, I know every state has to build roads, but it just seems like in 2012 we voted for basically a bond issue to give them money. I mean, how much money do they need? We're already paying them money to do these things, and I reject the concept, which this article doesn't. That we just have to accept it. We just have to accept that this is part of it, that we just all roads are always going to not be funded properly. No, I reject that. I'm sorry, I do. I just don't think. I think you have a misplaced view of the way government should operate if we're just going to accept that we're always going to have underfunded roads. Okay, you can make a strong argument for roads. You can make a strong argument that we need them to drive on, we need them to get goods to market, that it is an economic booster to having good roads, moving goods to market. I'm all good with that. But don't come to me and constantly ask for more and more money for them when your priorities are completely ridiculous. Don't come to me asking for more and more money when we're spending $7,000 a person to run our government when other states are spending $5,000. We're all actually almost spending $8,000. Greg Harton from NWA goes on, most of those roads are pretty bumpy. At times, that's hard to see here in Northwest Arkansas. Yeah, you think? Northwest Arkansas's got some pretty nice roads. I don't know if you've ever been on them. But he writes, the sheer volume of traffic has resuscitated a number of highway projects just to keep things safe and unclogged, or less clogged at least. It seems almost any vehicle trip of more than a few miles requires navigating concrete barriers and orange barrels. So they're building a lot. I mean, you should see the map of this. They're building. I had to go to Blytheville today. That's right. I was in Mississippi County today. It's a precursor visit to when I'm going back in a couple of weeks for the Mississippi County Republican Dinner, where Jan Morgan will be the keynote speaker. But anyway, there's all kinds of construction on Highway 18 from Craighead County into Blytheville in Mississippi County. And I thought to myself, well, look at all these construction projects. They got to have more money, though. He goes on, our Arkansas highway commissioners are again in the midst of a never-ending search for money to keep highway construction and maintenance going in the natural state. Now, that is a good admission. I like that. That is a good admission. At least we're being honest. Do you accept this? Do you accept his description here? Our Arkansas highway commissioners are, again, in the midst of a never-ending search for money to keep highway construction and maintenance going in the natural state. Now, I reject that. That's not the way it should be. But in order for it to not be that way, you have to entertain actual reform. You have to admit that the way we're doing things now is not the best way or is unacceptable. It's unacceptable for them to say it's just a never-ending quest for money. It's absolutely unacceptable. And we should take that approach with everything in government. Well, I'm a superintendent, and we've got to raise your property taxes again because we really need this. No, that's unacceptable. As the economy does better, as property values go up, you're getting more money. You're not going to raise my taxes anymore. We got to raise that sales tax, though, because, the sales tax is that no. The more people we have, the more population that we have, that number is set. But the more people that transact, the more your population increases, the more money you're going to get because there's more people buying and selling. Leave that rate where it is. These things are designed, ideally, to where, yes, the government has the power to tax. Yes, we have to have taxes. But this idea that it's a constant, where's the line? Government takes 5% of your money. Is that too much? 10% of your money. Is that too much? 15, 20, 25% of your money. Is that too much? 40%. Where's the line? 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Where is the line? There's obviously a line. Let's admit there's a line. And if we ever can admit there's a line, then we get close to it, that would mean that the government is going to have to reprioritize how they're spending our money. They're going to have to, and conservatives can step up to the plate and say, you know what? People really do prioritize roads. They need roads. We've got to have them. But you know what? Spending money on able-to-work adults for having free health care? Nah. That's not worth $100 million plus a year that we can't afford. It's not worth it. It's not the business of government. It says nowhere in there. And Jan Morgan actually says that in her audio. Earlier today, she said there's nowhere in the Bill of Rights that says the government's supposed to pay for your health care. Really good stuff. So it's a never-ending search. Let's see. Greg Harton goes on. Governor Hutchinson ran the Arkansas Highway Commission's funding bus off the road last week when he announced he would vigorously oppose any effort to divert revenue now collected and used for general government operations into the Arkansas Department of Transportation's coffers. He vigorously would oppose it. He made his statement the day before the commission planned to discuss ideas for potential funding. He likes to do that. So he basically said, right the day before they were going to discuss it, what are our options? He says, well, let me tell you what you're not going to do. You're not going to put a proposal out there for people to do, for people to vote on, that's going to take money away from my precious general revenue budget. Because if you don't remember, if Asa were honest with him, this is what Asa would say. Guys, you can't have any general revenue money because I increased spending my first year $130 million. I increased spending my second year $142 million. I increased spending my third year $165 to $70 million. And because I did those things, there's just no way that I'm going to be able to have. I don't have the money. We can't. I can't give you any money from general revenue because I've increased spending so much. And not to mention, in the midst of increasing spending, Arkansas now has to pay 5% of the federal Medicaid match, which is going to be at least $100 million this year alone, but it's going to be more because premiums are going up. And then eventually it's going to be 6%, then 10%. And we can't afford the $100 million now. And did I mention that I've increased spending my 3 years by almost $500 million? And that's what an honest confession from ASO would sound like to the highway department, that we can't have this money because I've prioritized it and already spent it somewhere else. Now, that's the truth. If we want to be honest about it, everybody wants good roads. Everybody does, right? One of my favorite, you know what? I don't care how we get them. I really don't. I know this much. When I leave this state and in the summer go down to the Gulf Coast and vacation, I enjoy getting out of Arkansas because the roads are better everywhere else. I especially love when you're approaching Destin, you have those Sun Pass toll roads that are really nice. Very, very nice. By the way, some of the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life down that way. Anytime I travel down to Florida, I love to drive at night. I absolutely love it. I leave at 6 p.m., Most of the time, I'll leave when this show is over. I get in the car and drive 9 hours, drive all the way through the night. Well, so about 2:30, 3 o'clock, I'm on one of those toll roads, one of those SunPass roads, and first of all, I've never seen so many deer at once. You wouldn't believe on the side of the road there. They come out of the brush and they're just hanging out, and they're huge. They're huge. Of course, there's nobody on the road at the time, so I turn the brights on because I want to get a good look at them. That's how many there are. I mean, I'm going 70 miles an hour here. There's just more. You would not believe it if I told you. You just have to be there. So I'm going 70 miles an hour, and I notice there's just an amazing amount of deer. So I start swerving over to the left lane so that I can then come back in the right lane and shine more light on the side, because I want to see. These things are huge. Anyway, the roads everywhere else are nice. Other people are figuring it out. But we're constantly asking us for more money, and you have a governor that can't quit spending. That's the problem. All right. Don't do what I did, okay? Drive safe. You want to keep your hands at 10 and 2. Did you hear that the governor's getting his flu shot? Be safe. Still, it appears that the highway leaders aren't giving up on their scheme entirely. Scott Bennett, the Transportation Department's director, reminded commissioners an online survey shows heavy support, 64%, for transferring general revenue, meaning the people, according to surveys, they want general revenue going to fund roads. They don't want to pay more in taxes. So they say that, Greg Harton goes on to say, these polls, they're not really scientific. It's Survey Monkey. What are we going to do? But, having it is better than not having it, but it's not exactly scientific. But then he goes on to critique and maybe explain why people voted the way they did, kind of criticizing or exposing the phrasing of the questions, okay? He writes, I visited the Department of Transportation site and looked at their survey. The listed options for the survey participants were, would you rather, an increase in the gas tax, an increase in the diesel tax, an increase in sales tax dedicated to highways, an increase in vehicle registration fees, adding sales tax on wholesale prices of motor fuels, or transfer existing sales tax or sales and use tax on motor vehicles and related parts and service currently collected but not paid to highways. Well, everybody said that that's what they wanted. They want to transfer sales tax on what does it say? Motor vehicles. Why is that not going to roads in the first place? It's just going to Medicaid. Exactly right. Now, if everything looks like an increase, but one option means government won't be taking more out of my pocket, I bet you most Arkansans are going to take the latter option. Well, duh. How does that make the survey less? How does that make the survey less important? Yeah, unfortunately, when the government needs to fix a problem, you've got more people who want to get creative about how to take more money from us than leave us alone. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just the tendency of government. They have an incentive to rob us more. How about you prioritize? This option here is crazy. An increase in sales tax dedicated to highways. Why don't we just look how much money we already have? Why don't they just prioritize better? Does anybody out there feel that they should just prioritize their money better? But that would require conservatives, limited government conservatives, when they make their suggestions, when they make their cuts from this program or that program, and then go to the people. Go to the people with their conservative limited government arguments and say, listen, we've really messed up here. The Democrats have been in charge of the legislature and setting policy here for 138 years, and they really have an inflated view of government. But let me tell you what I think. I think the government should keep us safe, should enforce the law, and I think the government should certainly have and provide for adequate roads. And this is how much money that we're taking from you. And it's a lot, and we can do this job. But we may not be on board anymore for having such a bloated government compared to the private sector. We may not want the public sector to grow unless the private sector grows along with it. We may not want all these licensing and regulations because we want economic growth, and that's going to give us even more tax revenue and things like that. But we can do all this. But we've got to start reforming, and we've got to start changing. We've got to bring that 7.8K number per citizen it takes to run our government down to our neighbors, about $5,000 a person instead of 7 or 8. These are the things we're going to do in order to give you guys roads, and that requires us to shift our priorities. See, if you just said something like that, and better maybe think it out. Don't do it off the top of your head like I just did. It can be done, but you got to actually believe it. You got to believe it. You got to know it works because it does, and you got to realize that you're going to get attacked left and right. Well, you're going to get attacked from the left. People on the right will actually support you as you lead Arkansas to a much better place. Yes, Joe.
Out of all of our neighboring states, guess who has a ton of roads?
Who?
I'm going to go with Texas.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
And they maintain their roads just fine because I have yet to hear anything about Texas. I know a lot of people who've been to Texas, drove around much of Texas.
Oh, they're great. It's great
exactly,
roads.
like great roads. And guess how much they spend for their
$5,000.
Yeah, $5,000 a person to run their government.
Yeah. So does Oklahoma and Mississippi and Louisiana. That's the average anyway.
It sounds to me
from the states around us. And if you take Texas out, it's still right at 5.
Yeah. Sounds to me if we want better roads in this case, because that's the topic we're on, then we need to start reprioritizing where we spend our money. We need to budget better, and we need to start shifting around some of the costs that we're putting somewhere else, like Medicaid expansion, moving that away from it.
In order to do that, you may have to reprioritize who's in positions of power making these decisions.
Well, of course, because if we keep putting Governor Asa Hutchinson back in office and expecting a different result every year, that's the pure definition of insanity.
Yeah, you're right. The spending will continue. The spending is going to continue, and the obligations, the increased obligations that we, the taxpayers, are going to be on the hook for, are going to continue the longer Asa stays in power, and it could be another 4 years. Who knows? But speaking of maybe not, at 5 o'clock I've got some audio from Jan Morgan. She was at the Faulkner County Tea Party, and I'm going to play it for you. Okay, coming up at 5:06. Don't go anywhere. Back in a minute.
This is for all you big government establishment Republicans out there. Hope you're listening. I keep a close watch on these votes of mine. I keep my finger in the wind all the time. I vote big government, and you will pay with your dime. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, there's always an excuse not to shrink government. It's much easier just to toe that line. I find it very easy to be rhino blue. I find I'm not alone when failing to come through. Yes, big government, I'm a fool for you. 'Cause every time I toe that line. Legislative sleight of hand would be an accurate description. Or you could just say, they can't quit towing that party line. As sure as night is dark and day is light, I'll vote big government both day and night. And act like I'm shocked when it all comes to light. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, the phrase toe the line is the equivalent of toe the mark, both of which mean to conform to a rule or standard. You could also call it the status quo. Tax and spend, I'm always on your side. I love writing government checks that I cannot hide. Buying people's votes always turns the tide. 'Cause every time I toe the line. The Oxford Dictionary word histories. The idiom toe the line from an athletics analogy originated in the early 19th century. I hope you don't watch these votes of mine. Hope you don't see through the lies and slime. Because I plan on spending with your dime. Because every time I toe the line. You know, toeing the line is what the folks down in Little Rock call progress.
PHP Parody.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, follow me on Twitter at Paul Harrell 1776. That's at Paul Harrell 1776. We sure do appreciate our Facebook Live audience. Dano writing, drove in Texas and Oklahoma this weekend. Their roads are great compared to ours. Levita writing, Texas highways are great. And Eric, this is interesting. Eric on Facebook writing that it's time for a constitutional amendment to end the commissioner system here in Arkansas. The days of unaccountable positions need to end. You're talking about, getting appointed and things like that. You know, I would say the same thing for you could wrap all of this up into one constitutional amendment if you want to tackle the commissioners and the appointment power and everything else. You could also do that with Arkansas Game and Fish. I think the commissioners of Game and Fish need to be elected, and you can ask landowners, and I really do. Now, there's some great Game and Fish commissioners, and they depending on what area they're over, but I mean, there needs to be a mechanism for the people to say, you're governing with this massive authority. We the people need to be able to kick you out of we need to be able to give your authority to somebody else. The people need to be able to take it back and give it to somebody else. And, this argument of well, you get to elect the governor who has a say, or you get to elect this person that has a say. That was Ace's argument for taking away your Supreme Court judges. He wanted to take away the popular election of Supreme Court justices, and he wanted to get to decide. And then he said, but the people would still have a say because they get to vote for the governor. Something tells me, anyway, you can always make an argument to deceive, hide the fact that we're concentrating power. Back in a minute.
Rush, Glenn, Sean, and Paul. This is Jonesboro's 1013 FM News Talk, KBTM.
Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
And specifically trying to have taxes levied on specific types of purchases. And at best, it's a difficult challenge. You're always going to be, I think your enforcement level of that becomes significantly difficult across the board. But from a overall perspective, all that tax will do is effectively hurt the people who are spending money. These people are still going to spend that money, and they're still going to spend it on the internet. They're just going to be able to buy less of it. The argument that it hurts brick and mortar it's an empty argument. It doesn't really hold water when you apply that to anything else that's going on from a taxing perspective. Brick and mortar companies are making, from my perspective, a comeback because the economy is making a comeback. They're having difficulty because the economy is having difficulty. People that are purchasing items online are still going to purchase items online whether or not there's a tax on them. They're going to purchase things that are locally whether or not there's a tax on it. That's what they need locally. So from my perspective, it's an empty argument and it doesn't hold water.
You're exactly right. And the fact is, we've got evidence of this already to prove his argument wrong, because Amazon has started collecting sales tax in Arkansas. And if his argument were true, we would have seen an uptick. We would have seen people be like, well, I'm not shopping on the internet anymore because now they're collecting tax. I might as well go out and go to the brick and mortar to buy it. That hasn't happened, and we've been doing this now for 6 months. You'd think there'd be this big increase, and so it is a phony argument. I feel like, and I'd love to hear your views. We're talking with Scott Richardson. He's running for Dan Douglas's seat in a Republican primary. I'd love to hear your views on limited government in general. And one of the other reasons I was so against this new tax on the internet, which it feels like a new tax. I mean, depending if you're talking about the use tax or the sales tax, the use tax we do technically owe. But
Sure.
I guess my question is, if we can stop the government from taking more money from us, that's money that they can't spend and use it to grow. What are your thoughts on that philosophy?
Well, our government is challenged across the board with a number of entitlements that we really can't afford. And really, this all comes back to that kind of concept. We have to understand that taxation hurts the people involved at the lowest level. So it inflicts difficulties there, whether it be from a business perspective and stagnating their growth and their ability to move forward. It impacts the individuals that have to spend money and purchase goods. It reduces their ability and their purchasing authority and power, and therefore drives down overall business sales. So it impacts across the board. And we know this. There's been a number of studies in a variety of different places, including the Tax Foundation and several others, that indicate that the higher sales taxes are, the higher your income taxes are, the more difficulty you're going to have in growing your economic presence. And right now, Arkansas lags behind the entire rest of the United States for the most part in our economic development. We've seen some good numbers lately, and I keep reminding people that's great. We need to see these good numbers, but that's just an indication of what's going on right now as an overall economy. It's not really a primary driver or indicator for Arkansas as a whole. And as we continue to grow big government, our debt to government continues to increase. So you have to evaluate the overall. And I'm not a person who's for zero taxes. That's not realistic. We have services that the government should provide, but they need to be minimal services. As the Founding Fathers intended, people should, for the most part, take care of their own lives. If tax is associated with bettering the playing field for the overall group or protection of the primary basic necessities of government, then we need to look at why those taxes exist and look at our opportunities for us to reduce the burden on the Arkansas folks. So that the reality is this is a returning investment, and it's been proven many times over that if you can reduce the tax burden, you're actually going to increase your overall revenue by growing the economy as a whole. Yeah. So it feeds itself and provides organic growth back into the overall government facility. But we need to be understanding of that takes time.
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here. There's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. It's hour number 2. Thanks so much for being with us. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. The phone number to call or text, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. So Jan Morgan was at the Faulkner County Tea Party today for lunch for their weekly meeting. And Joe, can you cue this audio up sort of left to right there? And I want to get through some of this because really good stuff later on. She talks about policy, but she also does once again tell the story of how she got involved in Arkansas politics this last session and how that's prompted her to consider running for governor. Take a listen.
See the list, and those are the people, folks, we've got to stand behind and support. But I got a call from Linda Collins Smith. She said, Jan, I need you to come home. I need you to come to the state capitol. We are in a major gun rights battle, and I need your help. And I said, really? I'm sorry. I'm not understanding this. See, I have been out there on the national level because I thought our state was okay because we have a Republican trifecta. We have a Republican-controlled House. We have a Republican-controlled Senate. And we have a Republican, quote, governor. I thought, and I'm sorry, folks, but I really thought we were in good shape. So that's why I was out there doing what I was doing on the national level. So I come home to see what the heck she's talking about. And I go to the state capitol, and she hands me a list. And she said, Jan, it's not the Democrats that are standing in the way, it's Republicans. And I said, what? So she handed me this list of Republican legislators, and she said, these are the folks I need you to talk to and go twist arms, because the governor is really doing some serious arm twisting the other direction. I said, wait, you mean the NRA guy governor? That one? Really? By the way, do you know what the Arkansas Times said about Jan Morgan versus Asa Hutchinson on the Second Amendment front? You should read it. It's pretty funny. They thought it was a slap at me, but actually they said, Jan Morgan thinks the NRA is too compromising. I was like, Yes. And they said, Jan Morgan makes NRA luggage carrying Asa Hutchinson look like a liberal anti-gun radical. Jan Morgan believes, the Arkansas Times said, Jan Morgan believes any gun, anytime, anywhere should be allowed. I was like, So I started approaching these legislators face to face, one-on-one. And I said, okay. And by the way, I tried the nice approach. Just so you know, how many of you have seen that video of me when I went nuclear in House Judiciary? You know, that was, I thought I was being pretty delicate there. By the way, when the Saline County Courier called me the Sarah Palin with less subtlety, I was like, subtlety? I looked up the definition. It said delicate, nuanced, understated. I thought, you know, I posted pictures of myself on my Harley-Davidson motorcycle, and to me, with my gun on my hip, I thought, well, that's understated. I could have had an AR-15 to strap on.
All right, that's Jan Morgan audio from earlier today. I've got more of it I want to get to, but let's, first of all, I've never actually had this thought until just now. You know, I have seen slowly, you know, anticipating Republicans in leadership being progressive Democrats. You know, it's unfolded, but can you actually imagine if you find all of this out? And I feel like this is the way. If she runs, there's going to be a ton of Arkansans that go through exactly what she went through. You know, like she said, she's on the national circuit. She gets a phone call. She gets a list of Republicans that are not being supportive of Second Amendment rights, don't want to hear and she's like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense at all. You got to be kidding me. Here's the thing: it's issue after issue after issue, right? It's everything. They are betraying the entire party platform. And can you imagine? I mean, it's hard for me to imagine just somebody that follows it. You know, I've been doing this for a long time, but for you to think that everything's fine in your home state and to find out that it's not, there's going to be a lot of Arkansans, if she runs, I believe, that are going to have a similar experience of, what do you mean he bailed on the religious freedom? By the way, I still haven't done my official recap segment of 2015 and what Asa Hutchinson did to your religious freedom. And I'm going to go over that. I have it sourced, and I haven't had time to do it yet. But we're going to certainly do that very, very soon, and I'm going to make a separate video of it because I want to set the record straight about exactly what happened. Kind of in response to one of Brummett's articles last week, when he said he made an anti-gay bill better. You know, that was the religious freedom bill that he describes as anti-gay, that Walmart called Asa, and I'm sure said the same thing. Okay, the next clip we have, again, this is audio of Jan Morgan from earlier today at the Faulkner County Tea Party. Listen.
I just would be a little direct, and I just would approach our legislators, our Republicans, and I would say, okay, it's my understanding that you are having an issue with this legislation and that you are for further restricting the gun rights of our citizens in this state. And I'm sure that I misunderstood that, so I'm just trying to meet with you to make sure that that's a misunderstanding. And every single legislator, Republican that I approached, told me that the issue was the governor's office. Well, the governor doesn't want this. So guess what? You know, just going right to the source, I asked for a meeting with the governor. Took me weeks to get it. I had to stand in line behind Moms Demand Action. They got in instantly. And they did a nice but cozy photo op with him in the middle of this gun rights battle. I couldn't get in until weeks later, but I did get in. And here's the governor sitting at one end of this long table in his conference room. And here's Jan Morgan on the other end. And a few citizens from Patriots of 746 group. And I thanked him. I said, Governor, thank you for giving us your time. I appreciate that. And I said, I just have a few concerns that I would like to straighten out and clarify with you. Because first of all, sir, with all due respect, in a recent public forum, you used the word privilege as opposed to right to describe the gun rights of citizens in this
Yeah, he
state.
did. Privilege.
And he said, well, rights, privilege, same thing. He did.
I love it when she tells him
I
this.
said, oh, no, sir. See, now there's the problem. Our founding fathers were very specific. They spent hours upon hours and weeks and months drawing up that Second Amendment. The book is this thick on the drafts alone. They chose the word right for a reason. Because there's a very big difference between a right and a privilege.
All right, stop. We can pick it back up here in a minute, but can you imagine Asa Hutchinson listening to this? And this is another stop in her listening tour. And she's telling a similar story, the same story, you know, just not exactly the same, recounting personal conversations with Asa. Now he's weak on the Second Amendment, that a right and a privilege is the same thing. Now that's, first of all, that's a complete misunderstanding of the function of government from a conservative worldview. A right and a privilege is the same thing. You have the privilege of freedom of speech. You have the privilege of being secure in your papers and effects. You have the privilege of right to trial by jury. You know what I'm saying? You have it's the privilege of the states to have all powers that are not delegated specifically to the federal government, to themselves, or to the people. That's a privilege, not. Come on now. No, it's the right of the people. Finish up here with this last clip. Again, Jan Morgan earlier, Faulkner County Tea Party. No. We hadn't finished that last one. Yeah. Continue with it.
It's something you are born with.
A right.
Nobody can give it to you. Don't give the government that kind of power, because what the government gives, the government can take. And any government that's big enough to give you everything you want and everything you need is also big enough to take everything you have.
That's it. Stop. All right, this kind of talk is great. All right, last hour we talked about Steve Bronner, or no, was it Steve Bronner who was saying that the governor's not giving any of the conservative base red meat. He's not throwing any red meat to them. Well, it's because that is what would be considered red meat, or just, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Ace is never going to say that. Ace is never going to say government is the problem, not the solution. You know what I'm saying? Ace is never going to say a government that's big enough to give you everything is good, because Asa is giving people everything. I mean, in the context of healthcare, he is completely bought in with the new idea. You know what? It's a right. Healthcare is a right. Next clip, Jan Morgan earlier today. This is audio from the Faulkner County Tea Party.
Question about that, and then I said, Governor, I'm concerned here because every Republican that I approached who was having trouble, they were having some waffling issues on the Second Amendment, told me that you were arm twisting, sir, and that you were pressuring them. And he said, well, I wish I had that kind of power. And I said, so you're calling them liars? And he just looked at me. And I said, because somebody's not being honest here. I try to be tactful, but sometimes when you've got limited time with somebody, you just have to get to the point. And I'm tired of BSing around the issue and dancing around the issue. I needed to know, are you going to tell me?
Somebody was refilling the drink.
But the bottom line with that is, folks, regardless of what kind of arm twisting, your representatives represent you, not the governor. And ultimately, not the governor, those representatives are responsible for answering to you. And they should be held accountable. When I left that meeting, when it was over, by the way, I asked for a number of things, which I won't get into now, but by the time the meeting was over and I walked over to shake his hand and thank him again for his time, out of respect for the office, he said, well, I know you're not going away. And I looked him in the eye, and my daughter's standing there. I took her with me because I wanted her to see what citizen activism in a respectful manner looks like. And I said, yes, sir, you got that right. We, the people, are not going away.
All right, that's audio. Jan Morgan, again, audio of her from earlier today at the Faulkner County Tea Party at the lunch there. And we've got a couple more clips that I want to play you, but we got to take a break first. Before we do, I want to remind you that if you want to support this program, you want to see us to continue to grow and expand, consider partnering with us with Patreon. Patreon is a way for digital creators like myself. I'm on the air every weekday for 2 hours, and it's a way for me to be able to give you extra content and extra features, and you partner with us, and the show gets better, our videos get better, we're able to do more things and do things for you guys. And I'm really encouraged right now. So far, we haven't been doing this for not even 2 months, and I'm encouraged with the response. I'm encouraged with the support. For as little as $5 a month, you can have access to our Wednesday weekly video as well as the message board. You can, for $10, become a Paul Harrell program producer, and you get the Wednesday weekly plus access to surveys about who you want us to interview, what topics you want us to discuss. And it's very interesting. Matter of fact, tomorrow we'll be interviewing the coordinator of the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party, Iris Stevens. She was voted by one of our Patreon subscribers to be interviewed, and that's so. And I said, okay, sure, I'd love to have Iris on. So we're able to do this for $25 a month. Become a Conduit Media Insider, get everything beneath, plus a Liberty Machine T-shirt, and to get access to invitation-only strategy sessions. Do all this now. If you think the show's of value, just consider partnering with us. Patreon.com/thephp. I'll put it in the Facebook Live feed. I know we got a lot of people who are already subscribers on our Facebook Live feed. We appreciate you guys. We got to take a break. Back in a moment.
iTex is your first choice for cost-effective IT services. Protecting your business means protecting your data. Are you tired of unpredictable and expensive spikes in IT spending? Using iTex will prevent downtime and loss of employee productivity and do it all with an affordable, predictable budget. iTex is the premier managed service provider for small and medium businesses. They help their clients put IT to work to earn your business more money, and you should contact them today for a free consultation. 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas. Do you need to advertise your business product or service, but not sure what the best choice is? Folks, allow me to introduce you to Talk Radio. You're listening to it right now. Talk radio is one of the most unique mediums in all of advertising because it actually works. It gets the information you want to the people you want to get it to. And by the way, those people are educated, well-informed decision makers of their household, and most of them have disposable income. If this is a target audience for your business, then you have to consider advertising on my show, The Paul Harrell Program. We have options for most any budget and can provide you with exciting opportunities to grow your business. We can put your message across the state, or we can help you locally. Call 870-275-9755 if you have any questions. That's 870-275-9755, or visit my website, paulharrell.com, and click on Advertise.
Now then, attend, as friend to friend, our declaration committee. For us I see immortality in Philadelphia City.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. 870-275-9799. 870-275-9799. I have somebody on Facebook, Corey. I don't know who Corey is. Let me see here. Let me scroll over him. Corey on Facebook writes and asks me the question, what will the show do if Jan Morgan becomes governor? Now, this is interesting because I don't know the context of the question, Corey, so if you're still listening, please elaborate and correct me if I'm wrong. It kind of sounds like you feel like I am putting an, too much emphasis on Jan Morgan and on this listening to her. It's kind of what it sounds like. So, like, the only thing we're doing is talking about her. Well, it's not the case, number one. It's not the case at all. But number two, if Jan Morgan were to get elected governor, I mean, the show would continue to do what it's doing, which is exposing the truth and advocating for limited government conservatism and economic freedom and small business owners everywhere. I mean, that's what I've been doing for years now. Now, the difference here is the reason why this is news is because there's a massive deception that is taking place right now on the people of Arkansas. We have just come off some very historic election cycles where people decided to say the Democrat policies are bad and the Republican policies are good. This is more desirable. This is what we want. And then to have people masquerading like they are implementing those policies, when in some cases they are actually continuing the same path that the Democrat policies were leading us down, is a form of deception, and it must be exposed. And I have been trying to expose it. Conduit has been trying to expose it. And now Jan Morgan is trying to expose it, and she might run for governor. So that is certainly newsworthy and worth talking about, I think. Joe, what do you think?
Okay, I think this
Did I misinterpret the question?
So I think we just have two different interpretations of the question.
Okay.
I think this question might imply that we're a one-trick pony of a show.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, no, that all we do is rag on the governor. All we do is rag on the bad things. And if Jan Morgan gets elected, we will have less things to be mad about.
Great.
I think
see what
that's
you're saying.
what he's getting at.
So, okay, what will we do? Now, that's you're probably right. See, I can't. I'm terrible at interpreting context like that on the fly. Okay, so let's assume that we had limited government conservatives in control in the governor's office, and then you had the sheep that would follow conservatism in the House, and you had the sheep that would follow conservatism in the Senate, and you had leaders in each of those positions. What would this program be doing? I would be defending those policies from relentless attacks from the liberal media. And if Arkansas was really on a conservative trajectory, I would be doing that every day, because the mainstream media in Arkansas would have a meltdown. And especially if you look into who has influence over statewide media outlets, you would see that very clearly. There would be a complete and total war against shrinking the size of Arkansas government. And notice that doesn't happen. One of the most liberal columnists in the state, John Brummett, writes articles defending Asa Hutchinson. So if we were actually going down, things would actually align quite nicely, because we have the winning argument: limited government, personal responsibility, the Constitution, putting government in the proper frame of reference. If these policies, if we were actually accomplishing something to these ends, folks, the liberal media would be going crazy. Now, there are some people that would say, "Oh, things are great under Asa. Oh, no. We're moving the ball forward. It may not be as fast as you want, but we're moving the ball forward." If that's the case, where is the liberal media with their criticism? Where are they? They're nowhere to be found.
Not only that,
and if they do criticize, it's like they have to try so hard to do it.
Not only that, when someone says they're moving the ball forward, what direction are you moving the ball forward?
Yeah.
Because my direction or our direction and their direction are definitely most likely not the same thing. Governor Asa Hutchinson, his moving forward, his progress is definitely not in the direction we would like it to be.
No. And it's status quo, and you're cloaked in, well, no, we are changing this and this and this, and someday all those changes are going to add up to big changes. No, we're not moving in the right direction here. The people are voting for reform, and instead they're being told they're getting it, but they're being deceived with carefully crafted language. It's a massive deception. So what would I do if there was something different? I promise you this program would be advocating for policies that will work and give people more liberty, freedom, and choice. And we would also be hitting back at the mainstream media that is virtually silent during the administration of Asa Hutchinson. Back in a minute. Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this. And I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
And we need to develop that from an organic perspective and stop pushing entitlement programs and bigger government just for the sake of whatever entitlement we happen to be the flavor of the month.
Well, you just mentioned entitlements. I'd love to know your opinion on how this has all worked out with you had a Democrat governor, Mike Beebe, in 2013. You had Republican majorities. The Democrats, with the minority of Republicans, went ahead and expanded Obamacare here in Arkansas. Then you have Governor Hutchinson comes in. He keeps it, renames the program. We have a program that was supposed to only have 215,000 people on it. It's been as high as 320,000. It was way over projections. And this is a program primarily for able-to-work adults with no dependents. So how has this worked out, in your opinion?
It's difficult to defend it at this stage. I know that there are a number of legislators that continue to defend that it was the right choice. They use a couple of different arguments for it. It's the lesser of two evils, so to speak. We had an opportunity to bring in a significant amount of government money and take that and spend it in Arkansas, further driving the overall economic environment within the Arkansas borders. I understand the argument. The challenge that I have is that from an initial perspective, Medicaid, Obamacare, Arkansas Works, however you want to label it, it's insurance, and we have a challenge with this as Republicans. And I think we have to reevaluate our labeling for these programs. We want to call it health care, and we use that term. Well, this is health care. It's health care. We're providing health care. We're providing health insurance. Health care is what doctors, nurses, and administrative staff does. Health care is not your insurance provider. Your insurance is simply insurance, and we need to delineate the two and make sure that we're attacking both of those from an overall perspective. And regulations is one of the biggest issues. We have a 10-to-1, 9-to-1 administrator to doctor/nurse professional that's added in our actual healthcare industry. This is driving up the overall cost, and that's because our regulations have created an environment that make it very difficult for doctors to be doctors and nurses to be nurses, and so they have to hire additional overhead. If we had that kind of overhead in standard businesses around our country, our businesses would never survive. So we need to look at that as an overall problem for healthcare and look at ways that we can reduce that impact to them so that doctors can get back to being doctors, nurses can get back to being nurses, and that our insurance environment, including Medicaid and whatever else that we have on.
Eagle's going to crack the shell of the egg that England laid. Yes, so we can tell on this humid Monday morning in this congressional incubator.
And just as Tom here has written, though the shell may belong to Great Britain, the eagle inside belongs to us.
And just as Tom here has written, we say to hell with Great Britain, the eagle inside belongs to us.
And here's the thing, folks, let me just tell you this. Regardless of what happens on this whole governor's race issue, regardless of whether we decide to pull the trigger and get in that race, let me tell you right now, I am off the national stage. I have pulled off, and I am committed to you. I am in this fight now because I've already started throwing bullets. And once I start shooting, it's not over until either they take me out or I take them out. Jan Morgan is somebody that we feel that we can trust in that top position of leadership. If you don't, guess what? My feelings aren't hurt. Not at all. Because I know at the very least you like me out there as a citizen activist, and that is why I started this listening tour. And regardless of what happens with the whole governor's thing, I am committed to this. I only have accepted 2 out-of-state engagements, and those are, one is with the South Carolina State Tea Party, their convention. I'm speaking at that. Yes, I've been a speaker there for several years. And another one is Bama Carey in Alabama. And then I did one in Oklahoma recently. Other than that, I'm through with the national stuff because I'm committed to this fight, and I'm going to be here for you, and I'm going to fight for you regardless of what you decide, all right? So I want to make sure that we have that understanding. Now, I want to tell you who I am,
all right.
Because a lot of you, when I'm hearing on the internet, people is...
That's Jan Morgan earlier today at the Faulkner County Tea Party. That's really good, and I think that is very well received when she does say, like, I'm still committed because of what's going on here. And so win, lose, or draw, or whether she decides to get it or not, that she wants to see Arkansas Republicans actually implement the platform and quit making excuses for it, right? And I think she knows that Asa is the problem, is kind of the head of this whole dysfunction, because he's not allowing many of them to legislate the way the people want. Instead, Asa promotes the culture and environment that you have to balance the needs of your district with the needs of Little Rock, and that is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. It's not how it was intended to work. So Jan Morgan gets a little bit past the Second Amendment stuff, past what you've heard before. She starts to talk a little bit about policy. Listen to this earlier today.
I am a conservative, genetically conservative. My parents would tell you she came out of the womb this way. I am a conservative who believes in smaller constitutional government, who wants to put more money and more freedom back in the hands of the people. What we've seen happen over the few decades is our legislators on the state level and on the national level have forgotten the pecking order. Somehow, they're under the impression that once they're elected, we have to live under them. And that's not the way it goes. They work for us. And your governor should have a humble servant's spirit. He is a servant to you.
You hear the people laughing?
Not your king. Your legislator.
Oh, stop right there. Stop right there. There's a lot there. Jan Morgan says that Asa should have a servant's disposition, a servant's heart. And you can hear people basically like, I feel like they're saying, wow, well, that we're so far from that. I mean, the humility? No. That's the way I see it. And then he says Asa's not a king. Can we hear that part again? Asa is not your king. I think there are many legislators that need to hear that. He is not a monarch. Yeah, here we go. Listen to this.
Servant to you. He is not your king. Wow. Your legislator, when you have to call to complain about something, your legislator should be standing in salute. Because, you know, when I was at state capitolist, let me tell you something. When I have to show up here, it is not going to be a happy day. Because I'm not here unless you're doing something wrong. I've paid you, I've elected you, I'm paying your salary for you to represent me. When I'm having to be up here and baby you and walk you around and tell you what to do, you're not being a very good elected official, are you? Do you know in this last session, we had over 1,100 laws passed? Some ridiculous number. See, I want to hear from legislators instead of coming home and bragging to you about how they built up their resume. I got this bill passed and that bill passed and this law and that law. I want to hear from our elected people, guess how many laws I peeled off the books when I was there. Yeah.
Stop. That's a great idea. You know, there's not a whole lot of legislators that have that mentality. There are a few. There are a few with that mentality. I'll tell you, one of them is Senator Scott Flippo. I know for a fact Senator Flippo looks at the books and says, you know, what laws don't make any sense that we need to get rid of? Very, very thoughtful guy. And we need to have him on the show again for some big picture conservatism stuff. He made a Facebook post a couple weeks ago that was so thoughtful and so intellectual. I mean, you would talk about, you know, they love to throw around this term down at the RPA. We need intellectual Republicans. And they think people who are limited government conservatives aren't intellectuals. They think they're intellectuals because they're big government and they want to use government to to make everybody happy or something. It's really, really weird. That's not intellectual. You're just being a statist. Okay, that's what you are. You want to know what a real Republican intellectual looks like? Go read Senator Scott Flippo's Facebook post, and we need to cover this very soon. But I don't want to let it fall through the cracks anymore, Joe. I'm way behind. I've got my religious freedom segment that I've got to do, recapping everything, and we've got to do the Scott Flippo Facebook post and actually have him on to discuss it. So that's what an intellectual Republican looks like, and he actually does approach it from the standpoint of, I know because I've talked to him, hey, what can I do to make government smaller by getting rid of some laws that we already have? It's really, really good stuff. Keep going. Jan Morgan earlier today at Faulkner County. Listening to it.
We don't have a revenue problem in this state, folks. We have a spending problem. You know, we constantly vote for tax decreases and tax cuts, and instead what we get is tax increases. And they can creatively, manipulate the way they say it, but the bottom line is, you and I know, because it's in our pocketbooks, we look at it right there, we're saying, my gosh, I'm being taxed to death. Yes. And if you own a business, you understand the regulatory issues. Our government shouldn't be regulating us out of business. Government needs to get out of the way, folks. The government is the problem. You know what the government needs to do about health care? You know what politicians can do about health care in this state? Absolutely nothing. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights guarantees you a lot of things, but doesn't say anything about paying for your health care. Every time the government steps in, it turns into a mess. My solution is get the government out of our lives. I don't need them to tell me which bathroom to use. I don't need them to tell me how to run my business and who can and can't come there. Get out of our lives. So you can rest assured of this, folks. I'm promising you this today, and I'm going to put it in writing on my website, because we're going to be rolling out my policy positions. But just remember, once again, when people say, well, Jan, how do you feel? It's not about how I feel. If I'm running as a Republican, isn't it sad? This is so sad that so many Republicans are calling me and asking me online, well, Jan, where do you stand on this issue? And where do you stand on that issue? And I said, that's standard Republican Party platform. Pro-life, that's standard Republican Party platform. If I am running as a Republican, then I am committed to that platform. Right. If I have a problem with it, then I wouldn't be running as a Republican. I would be running as an independent or a libertarian. There are all kinds of options out there. We have had too many misrepresenting representatives with an R in front of their name. And it is time to call them out. It's time to name them by name. And I tell you what, folks, Jan Morgan is at war with the establishment, with the progressives who have infiltrated the Republican Party and are taking us for a ride at your expense. That's right. That's right. It's going to stop.
Yeah. That's Jan Morgan earlier today, the Faulkner County Tea Party. I like it. That's good. That's good stuff. First of all, I really like the concept of misrepresenting representatives. And she's at war. It's good stuff. It does have to stop. She says that we have a revenue problem. I'm sorry, that she says we don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. This is a direct challenge. Now, think about this for a second. What we are watching here is just a complete antithesis of everything ASA stands for. ASA comes out and says we have a revenue problem. The potential primary challenger, Jan Morgan, says, no, we have a spending problem. I think that right there, that is a clear difference already. ASA says we have a revenue problem. She says we have a spending problem. And which one you agree with? And it's going to come down to as simple as that. And obviously, it comes down to money and message. Who gets that message? who sees the challenge. And Ace has already made a huge mistake, and from a Politico standpoint, he's made a huge mistake. He's given Jan Morgan attention by trying to get her uninvited, but some say getting her uninvited for Craighead County, trying to get her uninvited to Mississippi County, putting pressure on other counties, Baxter County and other places. And what happens? I mean, all it did was, because of this program, because of Conduit for Action as well, only thing it did was make people aware that Ace is worried about people talking to other Republicans about how he's not a conservative. He's already made a huge mistake. He could have just ignored the whole situation. When Jan Morgan was asked about coming up to speak at the first Craighead County event, she hadn't formed an exploratory committee yet. Now some said, you could find some that said, well, maybe some people were thinking she might. But do you think, putting pressure on these committees, you think that's going to scare somebody off who, if they're already thinking about it, or you think that might just kind of poke the bear a little bit more and embolden them? He's just made a huge political blunder. You need to understand that. And it's not just me on the right that's saying this. I mean, you can go talk to people who might be, a little left of me. Okay, it's still on the right, but maybe just not. You can go and they'll tell you, yeah, this was stupid. This was a political miscalculation, political stupidity on the part of Asa Hutchinson in his office. And now they're really worried. As I told you last show, Alex Roundtree, former political director of the Republican Party of Arkansas, now going to work for Jan Morgan. And I promise you, they are panicked about that. I know they are panicked about that. Telephone number is 870-275-9799. I mentioned tomorrow we're going to have a great show for you. We've got a Conservative Future segment. We also will be talking with Miss Ira Stevens from the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party. She is the coordinator there, going to talk about her ideas. And we kind of have missed this story here, but I'm going to go into this, Joe, because I want to get to it before we have to go. Because our friend over at the Center for Research in Economics, his name is Jacob Bundrick. He's been on the show several times. He talks about his policy papers. He has an article that's written over at, and I've never heard of this, Bloomberg, BNA, and I've never been to this website before, but the headline is Economic Development Bidding, a Prisoner's Dilemma. A Prisoner's Dilemma. This is really good stuff. Again, Jacob Bundrick is a policy analyst with the Arkansas Center for Research in Economics. Wisconsin's $3 billion bid to win the Foxconn sweepstakes has the economic development world buzzing. The buzz has only intensified now that Amazon is accepting bids in their search for a city to build their second headquarters. Cities all across the country, from Boston to Chicago, are putting together their best incentive packages to try to woo Amazon. But while there is much excitement around these mega deals, taxpayers across the country should be wary of the prisoner's dilemma that public officials are playing. Now, what does this mean? This is a great analogy. The prisoner's dilemma is a game theory model used to evaluate cooperative and competitive strategies. In the classic version of the dilemma, two arrestees are interrogated separately, with each having the option to confess or remain silent. If both remain silent, both receive light sentences. If one confesses while the other does not, the confessing suspect receives a reduced sentence while the silent suspect receives a severe sentence. If both confess, both receive middle-of-the-road sentences. Thus, the incentives lead each suspect to confess, resulting in both suspects receiving harsher punishments than if they had both remained silent. You know, the right that you have when you get arrested. This framework, Jacob Bundrick goes on, is useful for thinking about the strategies that individuals are likely to pursue in similar real-world scenarios. As such, we can apply the model, the prisoner's dilemma, to the economic development strategies of state officials competing with each other for business locations. To illustrate, let's assume that Wisconsin and Michigan are the only two states competing for businesses. Each state has the option to provide incentives or abstain and provide none. If officials from both states abstain from offering incentives, each state will receive business investment commensurate with their state's natural advantages and avoid the fiscal costs associated with tax breaks and subsidies, corporate welfare. But if Wisconsin officials offer incentives and Michigan officials refrain, Wisconsin may be able to attract more than their natural share of business investment, while Michigan attracts less. The opposite is also true. If Michigan officials offer incentives and Wisconsin officials refrain, Michigan could capture more than their natural share of business investment, while Wisconsin captures less. Because both states would like to capture a greater share of business investment and avoid losing share, both states are led to provide special tax breaks and subsidies to select companies. Again, corporate welfare. But much like our two confessing suspects, both Michigan and Wisconsin are now worse off than they would have been if they had both refrained from providing incentives. Each state may lure some projects away from the other, but neither is likely to consistently attract more than their natural share of business investment. This means that both states may incur substantial fiscal costs to potentially receive no more than their natural share of investment. Michigan and Wisconsin would have been better off to coordinate a moratorium on incentives and save their tax dollars. The dynamic, he calls this, I'm going to keep going here. The dynamic, he calls this an incentives arms race. The dynamic of the prisoner's dilemma leads to an arms race among states, with each state aiming to increase the size and scope of their incentives war chest to better compete for business locations. Consider two recent examples. In Arkansas, former state senator John Woods, now indicted, sponsored a 2016 constitutional amendment that removed the cap on the amount of state debt the Arkansas legislature can issue for economic development. Mr. Woods argued that the previous cap on such bonds meant Arkansas's hands were tied when competing for larger projects. In Michigan, State Representative Jason Shepard supported Michigan's 2017 Good Jobs for Michigan tax credit legislation, declaring that Michigan is in an arms race not only with our border states but the entire country, end quote. By the way, if you look at what State Senator John Woods did to this state, he may be reading about the damage that he did with ethics reform and the damage he did with increasing the amount of debt, making it unlimited, from a jail cell. I mean, what does that say? If he's found guilty, what does it say when the senator who shaped much of the current policies that are going to affect our state in drastic ways is behind bars? Just what does that say generally to you? He goes on. The incentives arms race has proved costly for states. The W.E. Upjohn Institute estimates that the cost of economic development incentives nationwide reached $45 billion in 2015, which is more than 3 times the cost in 1990. Making matters worse is that business leaders are able to exploit this problem by pitting competing states against each other to further drive up the value of their incentive packages. Consider the cost of luring an auto assembly plant. According to data from Good Jobs First, Pennsylvania taxpayers paid $84,361 per job, adjusted for inflation, to land a Volkswagen assembly plant in 1976. $84,000 per job in 1976. In 2008, a separate Volkswagen assembly plant cost Tennessee $308,000 per job, again adjusted for inflation. The 2008 price per job was almost 4 times the cost of the 1976 cost. So what we're doing is the states they're increasing the risk to a point where it's just such a huge gamble. This is a great piece. I may finish up with it tomorrow on the program. It will be Johnny Cash Friday. We're going to take a break. We've got to go back in just a moment.
Do you need conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you. Uncle, nephew, and nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions. Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody. If you would like information about advertising or supporting the Paul Harrell Program and Conduit Media Group, call 870-275-9755. Join the fight against big government and advance the preservation of liberty by calling 870-275-9755. The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
All right, folks, welcome back. Thank you so much for being with us today. We had a great time. Again, tomorrow is Johnny Cash Friday, and if you would like, you can text me your requests, 870-275-9799. You can also sound off in the comments on this Facebook video that I'll check and see if you got any requests for tomorrow. By the time the show starts, our playlist is pretty much set. So if you want to get this to us, go for it. 870-275-9799. Dano on Facebook writing, there is a revenue problem and a spending problem. The revenue is coming from the wrong place, and the spending is going to the wrong place. Interesting. I like that. What else do we have? Let's say infiltration is right. Same in Randolph County government. Also have Rick confirming what I said about Senator Scott Flippo. Rick writing on Facebook, Scott's my senator, great guy. I hope he runs again. So does everybody who loves liberty, Rick. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. This program is available for your viewing and listening pleasure over at paulharrell.com. Don't forget to think about partnering with us on Patreon. Becoming a Patreon subscriber, help support the program, get extra content. Patreon.com/thephp. That's Patreon.com/thephp. Folks, we'll see you tomorrow for Johnny Cash Friday. Until then, be safe.